All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating open source project called teammate.skill. It's a tool that's trying to solve a huge problem. What happens when that key person on your team leaves? It's all about capturing the most valuable thing that walks out the door with them, all that knowledge stuck in their head.
And this quote from the project's own documentation just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? When someone leaves, you don't just lose their ability to do the work, you lose the context, all the whys behind their decisions, the unwritten rules. That's the stuff that's so hard to replace. This tool wants to make sure that knowledge sticks around.
So let's really dig into that problem for a second, because it's a scenario that I'm willing to bet every single technical team out there has felt at some point.
Oh man, we have all been here. A key person leaves and suddenly you're scrambling, trying to reverse engineer everything they did. That handoff doc they wrote in their last 2 weeks? Come on, we know it barely scratches the surface. Maybe 30% if you're lucky. The real gold, that deep tribal knowledge, is buried in years of Slack DMs and GitHub comments. And when that's gone, the cost to the team, the slowdown, it's just immense.
So if that static handoff document is completely broken, what's the alternative? Well, this project's answer is pretty bold. Stop trying to just describe your teammate and instead build something that actually works like them.
And this is the key thing to understand about teammate.skill. It is not another documentation tool. It creates a functional, executable AI skill that an AI agent can actually use. So think of it less like a biography you read and more like a simulation you can talk to, a working model of your colleague's professional brain that can answer questions and even review code.
Okay, so where does this AI skill actually live? Well, it's designed for 2 main spots. First is OpenClaw, which is a really cool open-source personal AI assistant you can host yourself on your own hardware. The other option is Claude Code, which is Anthropic's agentic coding tool. So you can either have your departed teammate's ghost inside your personal AI, or have it available right in your command line while you're coding.
So how in the world do you actually replicate a person? Well, the architecture here is surprisingly clever. It breaks down a professional identity into 2 really distinct parts. And this 2-part model is really the secret sauce. Part A is the work skill. That's the what. It's all the concrete stuff, the systems they owned, their coding standards, their specific workflows. But then you have Part B, the persona. That's the how. It uses this really interesting 5-layer model to capture their communication style, from their hard and fast rules all the way down to their unique interpersonal vibe.
So here's how it all comes together. When you ask the skill a question, the persona model first decides on the tone and the attitude. Then the work skill model provides the actual technical substance. What you get as a result is an output that isn't just technically correct, but it's delivered in a way that feels authentically like it came from that person. Okay, so that all sounds pretty great in theory, but how do you actually build one of these things? Well, the process is designed to be pretty simple, taking all that raw data and turning it into a functional AI teammate.
It's basically a 4-step flow. You start by just describing the teammate. You answer 3 super simple questions to set a baseline. Then you feed it the data, all the source material. The tool does its magic, running that dual track analysis to separate the work patterns from the communication style. And then, boom, you get a skill.md file that your AI agent can start using immediately.
And the range of data it can ingest is what makes this so powerful. For Slack and GitHub, you can just give it a username and it'll automatically go and collect the data, which is amazing. But you can also just upload file exports from your email, from Notion, Confluence, or even just raw PDFs and text files. It makes perfect sense, right? The more varied and rich the input, the better the resulting model is going to be.
All right, so you've gone through the process, you've created this AI skill. What can you actually do with it? And, probably just as important, what are the things you should be watching out for? The practical uses are pretty compelling. I mean, just imagine a new hire being able to ask, hey, what was Alex's thinking when she designed the auth service? And getting a genuinely useful answer. Or getting a draft code review that flags the exact kinds of things your best senior engineer would have caught, helping keep quality high even across time zones. It basically makes all those unwritten rules and behaviors into a living, queryable document.
Of course, anytime you're talking about a tool that's going to ingest years of private company chats, emails, and source code, that immediately raises a huge question. How secure is all this?
And this is an area where you really have to be careful. First off, the project is open source, so you should absolutely have someone audit the collector scripts before you run them. Second, a security scan from ClawHub pointed out a red flag. The tool uses sensitive API tokens for Slack and GitHub, but it doesn't declare that in its metadata.
So the golden rule is always use tokens with the absolute minimum permissions required. On the plus side, it does include a built-in privacy scanner to help find and redact PII before you finalize the skill.
And to try to make sure the output is both useful and safe, every skill that gets generated goes through a 3-layer quality pipeline. There's a quality gate that checks against some hard rules for consistency, then a smoke test runs to validate its domain knowledge and make sure the persona feels right. And finally, like we just mentioned, that privacy scan acts as one last check to help catch sensitive data before it gets exported.
This really brings us back full circle to this final thought, which kind of challenges the whole way we think about knowledge transfer. In an age of AI, is a static document really the best we can do? Maybe the future of keeping a team's memory alive isn't a document at all, but something that can think and respond, a working model that continues to contribute long after a person has moved on. It's a pretty wild idea to think about.